Hello and welcome everybody to episode 8 of the Casual Spikes podcast. I am one half of the hosting cast in Dakota, aka Karate23 here on YouTube. Joining me as always, probably one of the most reliable people on this show because I cannot be trusted with myself, and Randy with Modern with Randy, and I can finally point in the right direction to at least reference that you're over on that side.
Well, at least you can actually point to me this time.
I know, I literally just like pointed at the wall. I'm like, I've physically like tried to point to my right, and that's not how cameras work. I need to point in the opposite direction. So
Very
thankfully,
nice.
thankfully, I'm not a weather person because I definitely would not be. I wouldn't be good at that job, and I'm barely good at this job.
Wait, you're getting paid for this?
You're getting paid. I'm getting paid in what the industry calls exposure.
Uh, does that pay for a mortgage? Asking for a friend.
No. It it barely pays for anything that would be on the McDonald's dollar menu if they had one.
God, that hurts.
But thankfully, we are not the casual fast fooders. We are the casual spikes, and we got some cool stuff to go over this week. As we kind of essentially in like a waiting space for Pioneer RCQs to kind of happen and get some of these other like tournament results and kind of try to analyze them and everything like that. But as you see on your screen right now, there was an Explorer, championship, arena championship going with the Explorer format that we are planning on breaking down the meta of, going through the top 8 bracket and looking at a really cool deck list that had a surprising run in the tournament. Some surprises from the modern format as well, because it's a little bit more shaken up than I kind of would have given it credit for here in the last few weeks. And some other vaulted cards that could probably see some play in, the other Eternal formats of Magic. Of course, before we get into any of that, and then I can shut up and pass a little bit to Randy over there. If you are not already subscribed to my channel or Randy's channel, that is the best way to support our content. Randy does the show with me, and he does his thing over on his channel, and plays decks infinitely better than I could ever hope to play any deck. So definitely go check him out. Subscribe to his channel. It's going to be linked in the description down below, along with my usual links and things like that. And of course, subscribe to this channel so you can catch the show every week when it goes up. It'll be going up on Saturdays, typically, usually around like 8-9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. For us Yanks, I suppose. Are we considered Yankees being in Ohio?
I don't know anymore. I think so.
I assumed anyone from the north is considered a Yankee, but in either case.
Yeah, I mean, you say that, and I see a bunch of Confederate flags all the time in Ohio, so
Oh yeah,
take
true.
that as you will.
That for some reason, like whatever. This isn't a
Yeah.
Civil War reenactment. Fuck them. They
Uh,
deserve they deserve what they got.
Jesus. Moving on from that horrendous take.
No, what do you mean horrendous take? What, like, why? We're not losers here, so like why are we parading around a loser flag? Just fucking get rid of it. They died like 300 years ago.
I mean, also, like, the Confederacy was a really shortly lived thing. If you've ever, like, seen anyone make fun of it, like, Phineas and Ferb had lasted longer than the Confederacy has.
Yeah. Well,
So,
yeah.
take that as you will.
Everyone's yeah, like the crazy things that people say about it, like disgusting. What is
But,
disgusting is also this metagame too. Not like Civil War disgusting, but definitely disgusting.
yeah, Rakdos vampires making up almost half the field. So, I mean, this was only 32 players. I'm 99.9% sure this is like an invite-only tournament. So, obviously, you're theoretically having, some of the best players, but as we've seen before with inviting tournaments, that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best players. It just means that they were good at playing something to get invited to it. Because I've been invited to RCs, and I'm definitely not a good player.
Dang, self-report.
Yeah, we've had some bad runs and luck. But no, Rakdos Vampires, to probably no one's surprise, was the most played deck here in the format. I mean, it's literally the most consistent deck you can take. It does things well. It puts on a fast clock. It has disruption. There's not really much more you can ask for out of a deck. Um, and then we had the Amalia combo. Again, kind of not surprising it would be in the top three with, it's just consistent. it can just win games, or if you're really lucky, you get to have multiple draws.
I don't know. Does it? I don't know. That wasn't even English. I said like 15 syllables, and none of them resembled anything of English. I don't know if any of these lists are like necessarily playing anything to. I think it maybe can create some self draws, but I don't know if there's anything that can force a draw with it.
No, I don't believe any of these lists are doing anything to like force a draw. Not to my knowledge, at least. Not unless like rule vehicles or like Jun Shadmagavai was doing something crazy in like their sideboard or something, or had some kind of like weird tech that I'm unaware of. Which I mean, it could be like they could have had something weird for that deck. And then we had Izzet Phoenix with 4 copies in third play, or like as the third most played deck, which is I'm kind of surprised. I thought there'd be more people on that list. Just because Izzet Phoenix is good. Like it turns out, being able to draw 3 cards for 1 mana is broken.
Oh yeah.
It's almost like a power 9 card or something.
Hmm.
If you take like the 9 most powerful cards, definitely 1 mana, 1 mana to draw 3 seems like that would be on like some of the 9 most powerful cards.
Can we have like a 2 mana or 2 mana time walk, but it costs like 8 or 9 cards to delve next? Make it cost an extra
Um,
7 mana, but give it delve.
yeah, and you can do that for 3 mana.
You can, but like triple blue seems very, very hard for my 5 color commander ramp deck to pull off consistently.
Moving on to probably one of the most surprising list was Contorius Combo was playing 3. There's 3 copies in this 32 player tournament, which I think is surprising because this deck has kind of been one of those things where people were hot on it, and then we found the new, more broken version of that deck. That bit got banned. So then Contorius Combo became the only like combo broken deck, and then people were like, "Oh, this is good. This is bad. Is it playable? Is it not?" I think it's very playable if you don't expect to see blue white control, and obviously there was no blue white control in this tournament, so theoretically that deck should have done well.
Yeah, I think this deck when I played it, back I want to say I think before even the December 4th bannings and stuff. Like whenever the Explorer set kind of came out, the uh, the combo felt very powerful. It felt very good, and like basically, if you're playing against combo decks, as long as they didn't have like their absolute nut draw, you know, and even in some cases, you could kind of stop them from going off. But it definitely felt like it was pretty consistent. And when it did its thing, I mean, the game was over.
Yeah.
There's there's no like, okay, I need to hope to get lucky. The deck is specifically made to like when you activate the ability and resolve it, like you are going to win the game 99.9% of the time.
Yeah, if the opponent doesn't have a way to stop it, it just wins. Like there's no like it's not like a Malia combo like where like okay, I'm gonna let them gain 40 life and then I'm gonna kill Malia. Like it's like nope, you're just going to die with that combo.
Exactly.
But and then we had the 40 other decks you see on your screen: Rule Vehicles, Rakdos Sacrifice, Jund Transmagnify, and Mono Green Devotion all showing up with 1 copy each. Kind of surprised anybody's taking any of these 4 decks, to be honest. Jund has like kind of put up some like weird numbers. It's probably the most playable of the 4 decks here. Like Gruul Vehicles just seems kind of bad. I don't want to play Gruul Vehicles into Amalia, and I don't want to play it into Rakdos Vampires. It just gets to kill all my things and do a better go big, go quick faster with Sorin into Vein River. And Amalia just gets to gain 1 million life and go over top of me. I think Rule Vehicles in the Phoenix is probably pretty good, or probably feels pretty good. So maybe that's what the Rule Vehicles player was hoping for, is they're just going to run into a bunch of Phoenix and eat them because they're going to put in too much power too fast for them to handle. Rakdos Sacrifice, I can only assume this person could only build that deck, and that's why they're taking it, because they should have just built Rakdos Vampires and, played the best deck in the format, or one of the best decks in the format. And then, like I said, Judge Transmogrify has put up some numbers and does some kind of done well. And then Model Green Devotion is someone still hoping that deck's going to be playable.
Of note too, it is considered Explorer and not strictly Pioneer, just for the fact that there are some cards that are not already that aren't on Arena that we do have in paper. So it's not quite Pioneer, but as you can see, it doesn't really matter because a lot of the top decks that we have in paper are the top decks for this tournament and more than likely on the Arena meta as well.
Guys, I don't think Rakdos, Somalia, or is it Phoenix is missing anything for their decks. I'm assuming knowing what Victorious combo is now, or like what has been, excuse me, what has been playing for the last couple months. Excuse me, all those cards are on there. I know Rule Vehicles is completely built. Rakdos Sacrifice is completely built. Monitoring Devotion, I'm 99.9% sure everything's on that, and I have to imagine Jund is all on there too.
Yeah.
Um, So I don't think any of these decks are playing like I don't think anybody's playing a deck that's not complete essentially, or not something you could go play in paper. Excuse me, play in paper.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but so if we want to go to the
Yeah.
top eight,
We'll check out the bracket here. I have it pulled up. Boop.
yep. So to the surprise of no one, the deck that was half the tournament was also half the top eight.
Yeah, so we had like four Rakdos vampire lists. We have a Contorious combo, Amalia combos in there, and Is It Phoenix as well.
Yeah. So kind of crazy. The top three decks were also like the top three decks in the top eight. It's weird how that happened. Sorry, top four decks. But also the top four of the top eight. So it's like not too surprising. Obviously Rakdos vampires, we like it would be almost I think statistically impossible for a Rakdos vampires not to put like more than two, at least two copies into the top eight. So no real surprise there with it being half the field, or one deck from being half the field.
Mm.
Um, but I think to the most surprising standpoint is that Quintorius combo was made it to the finals, defeating two different Rakdos Vampire decks in the quarters and the semis to get to the finals.
Yeah, notably having to beat Jesse Hampton in the semifinals too, which I believe in the Murders of Karlov Manor Pro Tour. I think he was the only undefeated player after day one, and I don't think managed to make top eight. But I mean, overall, a pretty good like tournament for him and that. So I mean, that's definitely no slouch,
Oh
to
yeah,
meet in the semifinals.
yeah. No one's sitting down like, oh, I'm playing against Jesse Hampton. Great, that's who I want to play against. Like it's. I mean, it might not be as anything as crazy as like playing against LSV or some of the higher known names, but like Jesse Hampton has definitely put up numbers and put up results. It's not someone you're just like, oh, cool, it's gonna be a buy.
So I definitely think a lot of like at least the three like American players that were like in the top eight. I guess three in the top four. Um,
Oh, that's crazy.
I think they've all done something like pretty like have done very well for themselves in like the last few like pro tours and stuff. So I mean, for this to be an invite only, I can only imagine like all the players that were invited to it you know, were either playing really good or had some pretty good results in the pro level events and stuff too. So definitely no slouches there. And
No,
again,
no.
Quintorius combo, like you said, having to basically be what we think, at least I think that we think is the best deck to be playing in Pioneer right now. You know,
Yeah. So I think Rakdos Vampires is the deck you want to take if you're going into any kind of open meta. Like if you are going somewhere where you don't know what's going to be like heavily played or whatnot, Rakdos Vampires kind of is good against 90% of the decks in the field. Obviously, it doesn't look like it's good against Contortius combo.
oh yeah,
With it being,
arguably it's pretty bad.
yeah,
Um, but Is It Phoenix, of course, having to be the one that soils the proverbial bed for everyone else and ends up beating our elephant friend and pilot Ryan Condon in the finals.
unfortunately. Which I'm honestly kind of surprised with because looking at the Phoenix list and what it had to work with did not seem like it should have won those matchups. I do think that it's very quite possible that Tortius drew bad. I did not watch the finals. I need to still get around to watching it. I've been busy this week and haven't had a chance, but I have to imagine that it might have just been bad draws or well-timed counter spells or something along that nature because the Izzet Phoenix deck was not really geared towards beating that combo deck at all.
Yeah, I want to say a lot of like the spells they have access to are really just like creature based removal. they really have a hard time dealing with like planeswalkers and things like that. But usually they're able to kind of pressure them and race them. They're not usually coming down and then immediately winning the game.
Yeah, so I think that like Phoenix can also just do dumb things where like they mill over two Phoenixes in the first like five cards of their deck, and they're off to the races on turn three, beating you down for six a turn. That's a fast clock.
Yeah, and you really don't. The thing is, like, I'll bring up the list for this Quintorius deck, but like that's the thing about like the Quintorius deck, as I kind of have it up here, that it doesn't, it doesn't mess around. Like it does have some answers for like some early threats from creatures. They might not be the necessarily the most efficient, but it does have some ways to kind of like stall out the game till it can get up to 5 mana and cast its game-winning spell.
Yeah, notably in this build at least it was leyline four leyline bindings and four connoisseurs being able to cycle or essentially cycle it and deal three damage. So those are its two big like removal spells essentially, and then everything else you kind of see is cycling to go get a land or part of the combo with Clever Impersonator, Spark Double, or Quintorius itself.
Yeah. And notably too, like this Garuda, like what we saw like way back in like the Ikoria days when companions weren't nerfed, like Garuda plus like spark doubles and things like that to essentially like go through your whole deck, and then you can put like five Garudas in play, and that's 30 power. That can
Yeah,
win the game.
yeah, that's it. You can just put in a lot of power. Like it's not crazy. Um, and then their sideboard was kind of geared towards then like the aggro or stopping it. With the what do you got there? The was it the plus three minus three card? I cannot.
Oh, but Bedeck, Bedevil, what?
Yeah,
Bedeck,
yeah,
Bedevil.
I can't pronounce that card to save my life. So you have that as removal spells. You have the thought just distortion for what I assume they were expecting for like the either combo decks or control decks running through. Just being able to wipe out their hand. Um, the Quakebringer is there for the Amalia combo decks. It says players can't gain life.
Oh yeah.
And then you have Kruga as like your if you have to go on like a secondary game plan type deal, being able to draw cards. Essentially, you ley line binding like two things, and you have like a beanstalk giant, excuse me, out, and you just play Kruga to draw three cards to like pull ahead essentially.
Oh yeah.
So deck looks good. I think the deck was probably a good meta call based on the fact there's no blue white. I think this deck folds hard to blue white control. It cannot just be a lot of counter spells. It's why you see the thought distortion of like the black card, in
Yeah.
the sideboard.
Thought
That's
distortion.
why,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. That's why you see that because it can't be countered and it just gets to duress your opponent for all their spells.
Yeah. Overall, this deck is it's doing something neat, right? It's kind of like a breath of fresh air from like a meta where we've seen a lot of Rakdos vampires, is it Phoenix, Amalia combo, even thankfully like no Lotus Field. I think Lotus Field's like one of the top decks that are actually missing something from
Mm-hmm.
Arena that it has access to in paper. So it's kind of refreshing like having a combo deck that feels like a combo deck where there really isn't any, what's the word I'm looking for? There's no
There's no
question.
whiffing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no question. There's no whiffing. Like I've played against like this is the problem against a Lotus Field, right? Is like when they go off, like there's still like some percentage chance for them to lose, and so like you don't necessarily just want to concede to them. Now, obviously, they start going off. They have seven cards in hand and are casting their second draw three spell. You're not probably winning that game. Like that's a pretty safe one to concede to. But like when they go off with like two cards in hand, maybe have one draw three, like they can still whiff, and it's just like, okay, well, I can't concede this. I have to watch them play Magic. Like Contorius goes off, and you're going to you will not be at you will be at zero life points by the time they're done. Like they're going to continuously discover four and get spark doubles and clover impersonators and consistently just copy Contorius, and because they're casting it from exile, you're gonna drain two, gain two, you will die. Like it's just a matter of do they hit four spark doubles first and start draining you for 2, 4, 6, 8 at a time, or do they hit the two clever impersonators first and then the spark doubles?
Yeah, I guess we didn't explain like what the combo is, and that's
Yeah.
on me because usually I like to over explain. So basically, like what Randy was saying, and like I'll move my name out of the way here, so we just have some fun objects for people to look at. So Quintorius says that whenever you cast a spell from exile, you ding your opponent for 2 and you gain 2, and it has Discover 4 for a -3. So essentially, the only cards you're going to hit are the Impersonator and the Spark Double, and you're going to be able to cast them. And since you're technically casting them from exile, Quintorius is going to deal damage to them. And thanks to Spark Double, you are able to have multiple copies of Quintorius in play because Spark Double is a non legendary creature or planeswalker, whatever, a non legendary permanent if it copies a legendary permanent. And so then you stack, now the next Spark Double you play or Clever Impersonator is going to deal 4 damage. And then, if you have another one, 6, and so on. So you're essentially going to be able to do, not infinite damage, but a lot of damage to your opponent.
Yeah, I mean, so essentially the only way you're not going to win by going through your combo is if your opponent the turn before went through and did the Amalia combo and is at like 90 or 100 life or something like that.
Very true. But even then, like, then you can just, like, I guess if you already go off, like, you can't necessarily do the Garuda thing, but you also have a bunch of other like 6 mana things. Like a Garuda could also just get Trumpeting Carnosaur, and Carnosaur can start the Discover chain, and eventually you kind of get to, if you have a Contorius in play, you get to do it, and also continue to cast things from exile. So really, you kind of do have a lot of options to just start dealing more and more damage to your opponent.
Yeah, I mean, so essentially with this build, you have your four Contorius that obviously you play that you can you just win on the spot unless they have something to respond to. You have four Trumpeting Carnosaur that can only cast or discover into Contorius, and then you have Garuda as a 4 of, which can also find Trumpeting Carnosaur. So like you have essentially 12 copies theoretically to find your combo and go off. So I mean, this is probably the cleanest build I've seen of Contorius. I think it looks really good. I do think that if you're going to take Contorius into a tournament or an open field like an RCQ or something like that, you're probably going to need to play some number of maybe more removal spells in the main deck, just because you're going to see those little low to the ground creature decks that will just run you over before you can get 5 mana or 6 mana, even with your mana ramp.
Yeah, it's I think a deck like worth exploring into, but I think as the current meta kind of sits, you're not going to see this. I don't think you're going to see it break into like the top 5 or anything like that. I think it's a fun deck to play, but I just think the climate is not correct for it to be one of those decks that you play over anything else.
See, I'm going to argue. I think that this is a great deck to take right now. I think that it stomps on Rakdos Vampires, which I think is going to be huge at majority of the RCQs. Like I know someone's going to go to a 25-man RCQ and no one's playing Rakdos Vampires, and they're like, oh, I didn't see any Rakdos Vampires in my RCQ, and whatever. But like, I think that if you're going to any like bigger RCQs or even medium-sized RCQs, there's going to be probably 5+ players on Rakdos Vampires. Just because it's the best deck to take into an open format, I think. But I think that you are game planning that your meta is going to be either Rakdos Vamps, Phoenix, or Malia combo. Like if that's what you're expecting to be like majority of your field, I think that the Contorius combo is a good deck to take to that.
Fair enough.
And I will probably be proven wrong or right when I either get O3 stomped or win my next RCQ with this deck.
I mean, I definitely think that it's going to be a deck that's better when people aren't necessarily prepared for it. So I guess if there was a time to play it, like kind of the beginning of the Pioneer season would probably be the one to play it, because I think it's going to be a deck that will probably like wax and wane in popularity. Just when it's kind of like Dredge, where I think if people are prepared for it, they'll have something for it and then it'll just like
Mhm.
feel awful to play it. And then when people are just like, hey, nobody's really playing it, I can dedicate sideboard slots to Rakdos, is it, etc. Whatever. Then like this
Yeah.
deck will start seeing play again and just kind of taking advantage of that.
Yeah. I can also see a world where it's correct if you're playing this deck not to reveal your companion on game one.
Ooh, ooh.
Just so that way people don't know anything. Like they have a much less idea of what you're playing, right? Like they just don't know what you could be on.
Yeah, I guess the only other deck that I think really plays Karuga pretty heavily is like Fires of
Yeah,
Invention.
it's fires.
And
Yeah, fires is the only other deck that plays it. So I mean, like, and I'm not gonna lie, if I see someone reveal Karuga, I'm gonna put him on Contorius before I put him on fires because I think fires is not a good deck to be playing.
yeah, I think just on that, probably on that fact alone, I think it would be like that'd be like a five head move or
Yeah, I
something.
mean that could just be dumb too. Like, 'cause I've seen people do this before, where like they won't reveal their companion because like I mean, unless your companion is Yorion, it's not a guarantee that you're a companion deck ever.
True. Yeah, yeah. And I mean, like I don't know. Who knows how relevant having Karuga in like the first game would be, out if you're just like focused on like comboing ASAP.
Yeah, I think your whole game plan is just to mana ramp as fast as you can to your combo and win. But I mean, this is basically all that's been happening in Pioneer or Explorer to be more exact. But Pioneer is pretty much also the same. It's Rakdos and Phoenix and Amalia combo are kind of the three best decks to be playing right now, and everybody else is competing for fourth.
Well put, my friend. All right, I'm gonna get this shit out of here.
Yeah, let's talk about the good formats.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Vintage.
vintage, gross. I watched some people play vintage, and I'm like, I already know vintage is like a gross format, but wow, like that looked pretty bad. That was gnarly.
So
Um,
should we talk about some breakout decks?
oh
Huh?
yeah, like
Huh?
something fun. Let's break them out.
Well, I thought it was great because we're talking about the breakout Amalia deck.
Yeah, the
Not Amalia. Asmo.
the
Asmo.
Asmo like food deck that.
Yeah, that is playing breakout.
Yeah, yeah. I guess real quick, because I guess we'll kind of get out of the way of it, just because we were just talking sort of kind of like Pioneer. Is if you couldn't have tell, whatever, English is hard, like the last like 15, 20 minutes, we kind of think that the Pioneer format is pretty much like locked in to what it's going to be with, aside from Quintorius, probably no real threats to like the top three or four decks in the format.
Yeah, until Outlaws of Thunder Junction comes out, I don't see any changes happening to Pioneer.
But even though Modern is not technically in season, and of course, they've had some crazy things going on over there. There's actually some pretty cool decks that are seeing a rise in usage, dethroning some of the decks that we have come to know and love of the format.
Yes, so we should talk about the Asmo deck, which is probably one of the biggest like breakout decks, pun intended, because it is playing the card Breakout. So for anyone who doesn't know what this card is, because most people don't, because it got dismissed early on as being bad, it is a red and a green for sorcery. And you look at the top six cards of your library, you may reveal a creature card from among them. If that card has mana value 2 or less, you can put that card into the battlefield and it gains haste until end of turn. And then if you don't, or if you didn't put that reveal card onto the battlefield this way, then you may put it into your hand. Then put the rest of the bottom of your library in random order. Excuse me, random order.
Oh yeah,
So this is essentially your normal um, Underworld Cookbook Asmo deck. So you're playing, four cookbooks, four Asmos. You're playing the four sagas, four Overshace Daredevils. Basically, like those are all the card. Those are what the deck is known for, and the one Stratosphere, right? Like those are your hits for Urza Saga. Your cookbook, you're playing Asmo, and then you're playing Overshace Daredevil because it combos with those cards. Um, but it's doing something a little bit different. So we have four Ragavans as well, along with four Entes. Entes? Entes?
Inti.
Uh, Ente. Sure, we'll say that. For Tarmogoyf, which if anybody remembers this card, still
Oh yeah.
is modern legal, despite not have seen play in for the last like 2 years. Also playing either there's a couple of different versions. So one's playing Street Wraith, the other one is playing Bobble. This is Bobble in that spot, and then playing Teething Wormlet. So if you don't know what this card is, I won't fault you. It's a one mana or one green, 1/1, and then it has Death Touch as long as you control three or more artifacts. Pretty easy in an Asmo deck. And whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you get to gain one life. And then, if it's the first time this ability has resolved this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it.
Hot dog.
So we're essentially just a value Asmo deck that is going to get um, value from just the breakout's going to let us help dig deeper for our Asmos, for our Tarmogoyfs, as like our kind of bigger creatures, our Entes for being able to get some more card advantage, and then we have Urza Saga to just make big dudes and go find either a Swift Sphere to push through damage or our underworld cookbook to get our Asmos out or to start making food or to start discarding cards to help get more value. It's just a giant low to the ground value deck.
I wonder. So I guess I can understand like breakout because it's got like a little bit more utility, I suppose. Because like you can get essentially all these other creatures, put them into play or whatever. And it's
Mhm.
probably better than the Finale of Devastation that some of these decks were playing, where you could just go get an Asmo on turn two, like guaranteed, versus hoping it's in your top six.
Yeah, well, I think so. I think the biggest thing about the breakout is you don't need that double green, which I think is probably a little bit easier on the mana, not needing double green on turn two.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then we have some good value creatures, right? We have the Asmo, we have the Entei, and Tarmogoyf. That's like our big value creatures. Because like obviously, like if you hit Ragavan, that's not terrible. That's like not something you're upset about. And then if you hit Oval Chase Daredevil or Teething Wormlet, that's probably like your worst two hits.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say the biggest problem I found with this deck in general, I'm gonna say, is that there's a lot of times where you have Underworld Cookbook and you want to get it going, but you don't have an Oval Chase Daredevil. So 2 mana to look 6 cards deep to try to find that and just get your engine going wouldn't be the worst card I've played.
Oh yeah. What's the two mana enchantment, like the green and black one that cares about cards leaving your graveyard?
Oh, yeah, it's the new card. I know what you're talking about, but I can't think of what it's called. Give me 5 seconds. I'll
Thank
find
God.
out for you.
But I don't know. I'm assuming people have probably tried it. Um,
Yeah, I know people played a bunch with it. I don't know how much they've tried with it overall. But I know what you're talking about. I just can't think of the name of it.
yeah, of course it like escapes me.
Yeah, yeah, because you make the plant tokens. Insidious Roots.
Insidious Roots.
Yeah. So,
I'm
I
thinking
mean, the
just
only
with like the Oval Chase plus like Cookbook like synergy.
yeah, I mean, the problem is it's only cookbook or only Oval Chase Daredevil that's working with. Like, you don't have anything else.
Yeah.
So I think that's why you don't want that. And I'm not sure what you're cutting to put that into this list either.
Who
Besides,
need
like,
who needs Lightning Bolt? 3 damage for 1 mana has been power crept out of the format.
all right, crap. Well, let's get you back to bed.
Well,
But
no.
no, this is an interesting deck. I'm really excited to see Asmo put up some numbers again. I have definitely wasted a lot of play points and money and effort trying to make this deck good and chasing the devil with it, and just like, no, man, I swear this is good. It's a good card.
This will be good one day. I promise. I hope it will.
This is why I own 4 Urza Sagas is because of this deck.
This poor man. Well, I guess Urza Saga's actually gotten like kind of expensive nowadays too.
Yeah, are they really up that high? Hang on.
Yeah, I think I picked mine up like for I think 20 a piece,
Yeah,
something
that's
like
about the
that.
time. Yeah, they're back up to like you can get them as low as like 30, 32, but they're averaging about 33, 35.
Stonks.
Yeah, they've gone up. People are recognizing that Urza Sun is a good card. Who knew?
Even better than what they thought.
But this
Yeah.
is one of the breakout decks that has been putting up some numbers here in Modern that has definitely wasn't seeing any play before the banning.
Yeah, and you know, I would, I guess not even really like any serious play because I mean, people have always been trying to make the Asmo decks like playable,
Yeah.
you know, and some versions were like there were some cool like combo builds like Grixis, you know, where they would take a bunch of extra turns and stuff. But I mean, this can't go wrong with having some extra value pieces that are going to kind of help you like get that card advantage and keep up really with what's going on, and then just make a ton of saga tokens.
Oh yeah, I like it. Like I said, I'll probably waste some play points playing it, seeing how good it is.
I mean, really, this like next deck is the one that you should waste your play points on.
No, because I refuse to buy Sildreds in real life.
Well, don't buy them. I have one. You just have to buy a second one.
Yeah, it's still almost $100.
Meet me in the middle.
No.
All right, fine, whatever. So we have another deck. So I guess in the same vein as like Asmo, people have been playing, mono black control slash like mono black coffers and things like that, and have been doing some. I mean, when it's good, it's really good, and you can just generate tons of mana, and of course use some broken cards that we're going to look at here in a second to kind of, leverage the fact that you're generating so much mana. But the fact that this deck is starting to perform a lot better, and it seems like it's actually doing something that is pretty powerful in conjunction with like what the rest of the format's doing, rather than it kind of stumbling and hoping that its opponent doesn't like kill it super early. But you have some Orcish Bowmasters and some Shieldreds, the basically the starter kit for stopping all the fun. But then you have like cards like Cling to Dust that kind of mess with like the Reanimator decks, stuff that they have going on. Damnation, just like a main deck Wrath for anything, plays
Yeah.
creatures, kill it. It's also a way that it gets around like the Scion, Leyline combo that every deck is literally jamming into it, except for of course Mono Black. You have like Deadly Cover Up is like another like destroy all creatures, and then you can collect evidence and then just get rid of it. So like you could blow up their Scion and then just like take it out of their deck, and then half of their like benefit of playing like Leyline is gone.
Yeah.
So extra removal and Fatal Push, Invoke Despair is more than likely going to get them to sacrifice a few key permanents. If not, you're going to have drawing cards from it. March of Wretched Sorrows, essentially like a 1 mana like removal spell. You can start pitching some black cards to it to kill some creatures or planeswalkers, and then gains a little bit of life. Shadow of Doubt is a fan favorite.
Oh yeah.
Like this is gonna stop players from searching their library. Players can't search the library, so
Yeah.
uh,
Great against Titan.
so do not do not Shadow of Doubt and then activate your Field of Ruin. Because like I guess technically you screw over your opponent, but at the same time you kind of like screw over yourself. So really, who's the winner here?
Me.
Do it as a flex, and that's the only way I can recommend it. You have Shielder's Edict, you have Thoughtseize, and then of course like Karn the Great Creator and the One Ring are like the cards that are particularly powerful when you have just access to a ton of mana. For the One Ring, the fact that you're gonna be able to play it and then draw an insane amount of cards, and you actually do have a little bit of life gain in the deck. Shieldred plus Ring combo is pretty good, and then of course like March of Wretched Sorrow just to like deal 10 damage to like a 2 toughness thing to gain enough life to not die to the ring, and then Karn getting all of its dumb Karn targets in the sideboard.
Yeah. I do want to notate. I think the one of the most interesting things I've seen the Titan or not Titan the Karn decks start playing, or I guess not the Karn decks in general, but like the mono black one is Tithing Blade. Tithing Blade. Sorry, Tithing Blade. So it is a
Blade.
one. Yeah. One generic, one black. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature. So this basically started seeing play because of the Scion combo. Basically, just like that is sometimes a problem to answer, or late game after you kind of answer some other stuff, you've already wasted the damnation or used the damnation early. This is just kind of like a great thing to be able to top deck a Karn, go get this, answer their creature, continue on with like ruining their game plan of playing Magic. So it's a good little answer.
Yeah, and like the backside, don't even worry about that. We don't really talk about that.
Yeah, it has a backside that doesn't matter. Essentially, you can craft with a creature, so you exile this artifact, exile a creature you control, or a creature card from your graveyard, and you transform it to become, at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses one life and you gain one life. So, if for some reason, um, they have somehow stopped your Orcus Bowmasters, your Shieldridge, and have your Karn needle to where you can't ever stop it, and both your Evoke Despairs are gone, this is technically a win con in 20 turns.
Yeah, baby.
So,
I mean, that's all I could ever hope for. I could ask for. It's just this card can eventually just win the game.
yeah. But realistically, the backside doesn't matter. It does exist, but I would have to imagine this comes up in 0.0001% of games.
So you're saying there's a chance?
I'm saying that you're doing this and you're flexing on your opponent when they're at one life and are hellbent, and you're like, you know what? Assuming, go. You have one turn to gain life.
Man, whatever. Just a big old gallon of haterade.
But the sideboard's basically most of what you expect to see out of a Karn sideboard. You have a City State Globler, Cursed Totem, Engineering Explosive, Ensnaring Bridge, Sundering Titan, another one ring because this player was playing three in the main, one in the sideboard, the Stone Brain, a Walking Ballista, and then the Blade that we just talked about.
Who knew? Probably of all these lists, Randy, that probably the most controversial thing is going to be either 3 rings, one side, or 4 rings main.
I think Four Rings main is the correct answer.
Those people, that's not what the people want to hear.
That's fine.
No,
Those
it's
people
not
are
fine.
wrong.
Someone's gonna get mad. I remember I had someone like say that, like, well, essentially to the effect of like you just have more rings if you have one in your sideboard, and the tax at times can be, it ends up being very real. Like when you need a ring, you need it like now. This is
Yeah.
JG Wentworth, and Karn
Yeah.
is actively making sure that you don't get paid.
I will say that I think that when it comes to the mono black control deck, it probably can afford to have the ring in the sideboard more often because you play so many main deck like removal spells and stuff. So like you can buy your time, right? So like you have excuse me, Jesus. You have your 3 Fatal Push, you have your 4 Marches, you have your edicts or 3 edicts, like you have 2 Damnations and a Deadly Cover Up. Like you have this like I'm gonna buy enough time type effect to where like you're
Mm.
not just you're not like Tron where like it needs it to ring now. It needs to be able to stabilize so it can find the mana and go off. And like even if you go turn 3 Karn, you only have 3 mana left over. That's not enough to play the One Ring.
Right.
To where if you're activating Cabal Coffers, like you can activate Cabal Coffers and have 8-9 mana when you're activating it.
Oh yeah. I'm sure it's just like a combination of like everything that it's able to do be a little bit more interactive, that you can technically play 7 rings in your deck.
Mm-hmm.
Again, probably the most controversial thing about these 3 decks is going to be that.
Yeah, because moving on to everyone's fan favorite of either you can't stand this deck and wish that it was banned, or you love this deck because you don't have friends. Urgatron.
Oh yeah.
So, um, basically, it's a pretty stock list. The one we're looking at here does have one little anomaly. It's playing Ulamog, the Infinite Gyre.
That's how I pronounce
So
that.
I'm not sure. Not sure why they were playing that. Could have been 1,000 different reasons. They could have had a bet with a friend that they couldn't do well with it. Well, with Ulamog in their deck, who knows? But
we know the conversation went, you're not going to be able to do well with Tron.
Yeah,
So let's flex even further.
but I mean, it's a pretty stacked list as a whole outside of that thing. But Tron is back on the uptick. It's doing well. Kind of interesting to see it do well. But nothing crazy here besides I was playing four rings main, which I think is the correct choice if you're playing Ursatron. I think that tax is a very real tax of 4 mana with Karn. But that being said, like there's nothing too crazy. Pick Your Poison is probably one of the biggest new adds to this. This player's even playing, one Pick Your Poison main with two in the side. Um, but I guess the other controversial too is they're playing four O Stones main. I know a lot of them easily play one in the sideboard. Um, just because it's something you do want to tend to grab with Karn. And if you're sitting in a position where, it's advantageous for you to want to blow up your board state, 4 mana for Karn, you have 3 mana left over to go pick up O Stone. That's not a bad pickup. It's that's divisible by 7 type deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
I'll go ahead.
I don't have too much. I was just like, but I mean it's a pretty stocked list overall.
Dakota, you can interject at any time now. I freaking hate this deck.
I don't hate this deck. I hate playing against it sometimes, depending on what deck I'm playing.
True. Tron, Tron has like always been one of those decks where inherently what it's doing, is unfair. The sheer consistency this deck has to get Tron on turn 3, to be able to mulligan down to 3 or 4 cards and still be able to assemble, essentially a 3-card combo that needs a 4th piece to actually mean anything, and is able to do it consistently and has access to some of the most powerful colorless spells like in the format, that I always think it should be better than what it is. And it's just one of those times where like Tron is, maybe not the best thing to be doing, but it's definitely one of the most powerful things that you could be doing. And we're kind of seeing it now where I think it's getting the respect I think it deserves, kind of at the right time. Again, like this is usually a deck that ends up falling out of favor, later into a format. So, we could see it go on the downtick. But as it stands right now, I mean, make a ton of mana, play big things. It seems pretty good.
Yeah, it's hard to say no to that, essentially. Um, I will say that I have seen like the 5-color domain aggro decks. I have started been playing like 3 Obsidian Charm models in their sideboard, specifically for Tron, because it's becoming, it's showcasing so much more. For anyone who doesn't know what Obsidian Charmal is, just in case you haven't seen it, it is 3 generic, 2 red for a 4/4 dragon, and the spell costs 1 generic less for each land your opponent controls that could produce colorless. It has flying, and then when it enters the battlefield, destroy target non-basic land an opponent controls. So it is one of these things where, like, you are seeing an uptick of certain things in sideboards because Tron is starting to see more play.
Yeah, and I mean Charma a lot of the time too just ends up feeling like a Stone Rain. I mean, when like you're on the play, your opponent plays a second Tron land, and you just like pay 3 mana, blow up their land, and you have a 4/4, which is 2 things that you need to be doing against Tron, which is like disrupting them from either assembling Tron or having something to do with all that mana, and then putting a clock on them so they have to find it in 2 turns rather than like 7 turns.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not enough just to blow up. Like, if you exile all their Urza Binds, but then don't put any pressure on the field, they'll eventually get to like 5, 6, 7 mana and just start casting these spells. So, like, you're still going to lose. Like, one coil cast on turn 3 or cast on turn 6 still hits for 6.
Yeah. And
Like, you just delayed it by 3 turns.
the amount of games that I've won with Tron and the amount of games I've lost to Tron in any era that Tron has really been legal is like astronomical, when you, as like the person playing against it, do as you said. You blow up all their land, you keep them off Tron forever, but you never put a clock on them. Or you're in the Tron seat and you're like, well, there goes like 4 of my lands, you can definitely win the game and then like absolutely just slam the door on your opponent for them ever coming back into the game as long as you're able to hit your land drops.
Yeah, I will say that Tron seems to be increasing the number of warm coil engines it's been playing. Like this list is up to 3 now in the main deck. Um, Warm coil engine definitely has kind of become a lot better over the years. So warm coil engine used to be a trash card because all like the primary removal spells was like Path Exile. Warm
Mm-hmm.
coil engine doesn't want to be Path. It wants to die to get value. Well, Path Exile is a laughable card now. No one's playing that card. One Coil Engine has become a lot better against all these like aggro and mid range decks that don't have a good way to remove it. At the very worst, you're still always 2 for 1 in your opponent because they're gonna remove One Coil Engine and they still have to deal with the 2 leftover bodies.
And the fact of it being a 6/6, something you can cast on turn 3 is like a 6/6. It does rumble
Mm-hmm.
pretty well with the like a lot of the threats from the domain deck that can only really get up to 5
5.
power. And it's like you just straight up win regardless if they have Scion Leyline or if they just have Territorial Kavu. It's going to win combat,
Mm-hmm.
and stick around on the battlefield as well. Or they're going to need something like a Lightning Bolt or like a Tribal Flames to finish it off, which you're happy with because they spent 2 cards to get rid of half of your card.
Yeah, exactly. So it is. I do think that's one of the reasons you see Tron being even more upticked is that One Coil Engine is a good card again in Modern.
Oh yeah, like it never left, baby.
Yeah.
Oh, also just Ulamogging your opponent on turn 4 as well and like double stone raining them when they essentially
Oh,
had 0
Jesus.
development. It's pretty nice too.
Yeah, don't talk to me about that kind of BS.
Who cares if you have a Scion in play if I just get rid of your Leyline and a land? Try to beat
Yeah,
my 10/10 loser.
10/10 to exiles 20 cards at a time too.
True. And like with a lot of people too, like I've seen I've seen probably too many screenshots of people that just like only have fetch lands with a Leyline in play and they're like, "Well, I'm just never going to have to fetch cuz I produce all my colors of mana." And then like you get rid of their Leyline and their territorial Kavu dies
Oh, that's wild. I didn't
yep
even think of that. That's funny. How
because
do
it
you?
would never come up.
Yeah, it would never come up. But no, these are like 3 of the decks. We were kind of surprised to see like as an uptick or starting to do well again or doing well. So like Underworld Breach, I think is probably Underworld Breach. Underworld Cookbook. Jesus Christ,
Mm.
cards are hard. Reading's hard. Is probably the biggest surprise. With breaking out with the new breakout card. People are kind of started testing with that card now. I've seen some other people playing some different lists. I know Spike was playing an all combo deck with Breakout, and it looked pretty clean and interesting. So it's kind of cool to see that card starting to make waves. I know when it was first released, people like this card's broken, it's going to be amazing, and then pretty much everyone kind of looked at that card and said it's not good enough to really do anything because it's only putting a 2 mana card into play is cool, but like it needs to be impactful or doing something, right? Like it's not just like the problem is like 2 mana cards aren't usually broken, like they're not winning the game.
Yeah, and the fact that this deck in particular, as I mentioned earlier, would play like Finale of Devastation because on turn 2 you could just put an Asmo into play, or if you had one in your
Mm-hmm.
graveyard, put into play, whatever. And now it has a card that you can play some of these other cheaper creatures that are going to be pretty decent, and other creatures that you'd want to see, so that if you don't hit your Asmo, well then you still get something for your troubles too. It's not just like a spell that is going to have to force you to play your third, fourth, fifth land. Like you can still, play less lands. You can play 2 of them and then go and hopefully get your Asmo or a threat that can win the game.
Mm-hmm. I still think that like one of the bigger, I think untalked about facts of Breakout is it being able to grab a whole chase Daredevil. Because I like I said, I've played a lot of Asmo and I've tried to do a lot of good things with Asmo and I failed a lot. Um, but I did find a lot of the problem with Asmo is when you have Asmo, you have Underworld Cookbook, and you don't want to start discarding your cards in hand because like they're still relevant and good. and you're like, well, I really wish I had Oval Chase Daredevil. 2 mana to go find your combo piece doesn't feel bad because you want it in your hand. You don't want that on the battlefield anyway. So like, 2 mana, look at the top six. Hey, Oval Chase, I'll take this. I would discard it immediately and start getting this chain going.
Oh yeah, and since day one, that's where like the power of these, well, not solely the power, but where it's kind of like busted, where you have this removal on board for just about every big creature your opponent could play, and then like you can just have a free card to discard like every time. Like you're just gonna be able to make 4 food or whatever for the cost of 0 cards.
Yeah, exactly. It's what keeps the engine going. But these are some of the decks that kind of stood out to us that have been seeing play in modern, kind of the uptick. Like I said, we're in like that weird waiting room between um, Outlaws coming out, Modern Horizons 3, and then in the distant future, the RCQ season. So we're in that weird like waiting room, waiting for something to impact the format.
Yeah, just a hair on the awkward side, honestly, for at least making content.
Yeah, I will say modern does feel a lot more open since they banned My Kitties.
Since they banned since they banned violent outburst.
Yeah, since they banned Violent Outbursts.
They
Um,
unbanned some of the sorcery speed cascade spells, and they banned the instant speed one.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, modern does kind of feel more open. I also think that was a product too of the fact that we're not in the RCQ season. I think that kind of so I think that when you go into these seasons for like you're trying to win, you're trying to find the quote unquote best deck, you're not doing a lot of brewing. Like everyone knew Rhinos was good. Why would I not play Rhinos type deal? Like,
Mm.
everyone knew Titan is good. Why would I not play Titan? So if you're in this kind of like world where you want to just win or you're just trying to win, why am I brewing when I know that there's a deck that does well and is consistent and has put up numbers after numbers after numbers?
Yep, yep.
So I do think that Modern would have opened up a lot more after the RCQ season without the banning. I'm not saying the banning was bad or good or whatever. I do think that Modern would have opened up more though after that time period, just because people don't like playing Rhinos just to play Rhinos. Like the deck's not that fun for a lot of people. That's like the biggest problem people have is it's boring, it's repetitive, it's the same thing. So I do think we would have saw this happen as well. We would have saw the format open up more. I think the prelims and the 64s and whatever else still probably would have like been dominated by Rhinos. You would have seen a lot of Rhinos because like you're playing in that tournament to win and get the chests, get the prizes, get whatever you could get with those. So I think Rhinos still would have been dominant in that standpoint, but we would have saw a lot more decks. I think still open up the format without the banning.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm just really happy that the living end decks don't exist. I mean, I saw like one of them actually put up a result, but I mean, by and large, like they have to play on their turn. They're not wrathing. They're not wrathing the board and then winning the game on the untap.
Yeah, with counter magic backup.
Yeah, with force of negation backup, I'm going to attempt to kill you.
Yeah, I mean basically force a will at that point.
Yeah, might as well be. I don't care. Like this card isn't getting exiled because I'm just picking up all my cards anyway. So
Yeah, this card gonna resolve. My opponent's gonna go. All right, let's go to the next game.
yep, my cards are returning to the deck box zone,
Yeah,
so I can go buy a hot dog and then cry.
so I don't have friends.
Um, but we have, well, I guess technically 2 things that we're gonna kind of look at because I think for the most part the spoilers for the main set are pretty much all said and done. If you want to
Yeah,
see some of the cards that we think are going to make an impact and some of the other eternal like constructed formats, the previous episode we had, we do talk about some of our personal picks and kind of why we think, why they could potentially see play and things like that. So, of course, after you're done watching this, go check it out. But they were going to have I guess it's called like a vaulted set or whatever. It was supposed to basically be like the March of the Machines aftermath. So they tried to sell you DLC to your expansion,
that did so
essentially.
bad.
It did so bad they just decided that they were going to include it in the set instead of it being its own standalone thing like the Aftermath set was.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm happy too because after looking at a lot of like these vaulted cards, we have like probably like 5 or 6 that people will be happy to open, and the rest of it is just like, oh, cool, I opened up this. I'm glad I spent $5 on this pack.
Well,
Why does Wizard hate me?
and that's a perfect place to start because this could be a card that people might just be crossing out the first word of it and then writing another one in its place in Lost Jite.
Yes.
So it's a one cost legendary artifact equipment that has equip 1. And whenever equipped creature deals combat damage, so it doesn't even have to deal combat damage to a player, it can deal combat damage to a creature, planeswalker, what have you. It gets a charge counter on it. And then you can remove the charge counter and choose one of the effects of untapping a target land. Target creature can't block this turn. You put a +1/+1 counter on the equipped creature. For the initiated, the reason why I even bring this card up is because there's I mean, we can say it's like definitely more broken. Like it's definitely
Oh
like
yeah, for
probably
sure.
one of the best equipment of all time, like ever printed. Like probably top 3, top 5 still. In Umezawa Jite, which this card shares like one trait to it, and that's the fact that you have a way to buff the equipped creature.
Yeah.
Where Jite gives +2/+2, this puts a +1/+1 counter on it, and so
Yeah.
on.
So I will say for anyone who doesn't know what uh, Umazawa's does, it is a 2 mana legendary artifact equipment. Equips for 2. Has the same reading of whenever equipped creature deals combat damage, put 2 charge counters on it. And then it had the broken abilities of giving target creature -1/-1 till end of turn, gaining 2 life, or equipped creature got +2/+2 until end of turn.
And so I mean, it's like a card people always want back in modern for some
Yeah,
reason. We're
yeah,
complaining.
it's currently banned in modern, and if you ever listen to people who want it back, they've never played against it, or if they played against it, it's in Commander. Um, I will say since probably its printing, it has been in Legacy. Legacy has a bunch of like brokenish things it can do. It has a lot of powerful things it can do. That card, since like getting put into Legacy, I don't think it's ever not been played. So I mean, take that information for what you will. And just as a side note, for the people who continuously talk about how Umazawas can get unbanned, your best case scenario is that Umazawa's Jitte gets unbanned and then is just trash and does nothing. That's your best case scenario, is that it was a waste of an unbanned. The actual thing that will happen is it's going to start warping the meta around it. Because it's a powerful card that's going to interact with every creature, and it's going to interact and do not what you want it to do. People cried about Fury for years. Well, yeah, years. It was years. Cried about Fury for years. But let's unban a card that goes into every deck if you're playing creatures, that also just ruins little creatures and ruins combat.
Oh yeah.
Doesn't sound fun.
No, the idea of like, if you've already got counters on it, you buff your creature to run over the creature blocking it, and then you deal your damage, and then you pick off like the other creatures on the other side of the board.
Yeah. Also, side note for anyone who hasn't played with Umazawas, because I played with it in Legacy, in Death and Taxes. So if you haven't played with it and you're playing against someone who hasn't played with it, it's very fun to put it on Thalia that has First Strike. So the way this works is Thalia's First Strike goes through. Umazawa's gets counters. Your creature already has 2 damage on it. I'm now going to put up to at least 2 more -1/-1 counters on it. And I'm now trading up with X4s or whatever. Like I can trade up with X4s. You need an X5 now to block my Thalia and win in combat.
Oh yeah.
Like it does disgusting things. This one not nearly as broken. Especially like with just the 1 charge counter on it. Notably, though, I do like the fact that this you're able to get this with Urza Saga.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like the thing that at least people are going to experiment and play with. That there's probably going to be something here. Interesting enough, like something like the scales deck might, the fact that this thing can give a creature a +1/+1 counter on it, of course, it's like an artifact that you can get. It's not going to be the best 1 mana artifact that you can get in that deck, but the fact that like this does give you a little bit of like incremental advantage to where like you get a few counters on this, like okay, I'll start putting +1/+1 counters on equipped creatures, and it equips for 1. So then you could just kind of pass this along, if you have nothing else to do, and put
Mhm.
multiple counters on your things.
Also, being able to untap a land too is very good. Just with the you know, especially if you're like Urza Saga's late game, where you're being able to make like 3, 4 tokens from your Urza Saga now instead of the two.
Oh yeah.
Also notably, I don't know if anyone like doesn't know this or doesn't understand how this card works. It doesn't need to be equipped to untap a land or make a target creature not be able to block this turn. It only needs to be equipped to put that +1/+1 counter on a creature because of how it's worded. So like that's what makes Umazawa so good is it didn't need to be equipped to gain life or to put -1/-1 counters on creatures. Like, you attacking with your creature, suicided it, and get 2 counters on it. Now you just have 2 counters kind of sitting on it. Same thing with this is like you attack with this a couple times, maybe you lose some like little 1/1 tokens or whatever you have like floating around, and you have like 2, 3, 4 counters on this, and you just get to a point where like, all right, cool. Well, I have this big creature, and you have 3 blockers. You now don't have 3 blockers. I'd like to kill you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think while this deck is not, or this card isn't as broken, as its brother, essentially the inspiration for
Yeah.
this card. It's probably still pretty good. I think it's doing a lot of like good things to where I think this isn't nearly as egregious as the original GT, and could see some meaningful play, in modern, and maybe could make some kind of like scales deck in Pioneer, relevant.
Yeah, possibly. I think this card will see play in modern, if nothing alone, just the scales deck will probably pick it up, along with the deck escapes me. The mono white
Oh, the martyr,
hammer
mono
time.
white martyr. Oh,
No, hammer
hammer.
time. Hammer time will pick this up. Just for the fact of being able to, I think the target creature can't block this turn is really good with that deck.
Hmm.
Because sometimes like you want to try to get in there with that ornithopter to get like the surprise damage, and they have a random flyer lying around or have something like that. Just being able to you know force through that damage randomly by your flyer can't block. I'm gonna attack my innocent O2 ornithopter. Now it's 20 power.
Whoops! I win the game.
Yeah, so I do think that like, and it's another thing they have to get off of either Stoneforge or Urza Saga. So it might, bring some more life into that deck. It has been on the downtick for a little while now.
Well, I for one do not miss hammer one bit.
I don't either.
So that is the Lost GT. Let's go ahead and look at this other, like the last card, because like really there's some cool cards from that set. There's like the memory jar, like kind of like retrain, that's like double red and 3, that exiles the cards. Essentially impulse draws them.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's fine. But I think this land might actually be pretty neat. So we have Fomori Vault, which I can't move this over, of course. Thank you. Fomori Vault is a land that produces colorless mana, and that you can pay 3 and tap it, discard a card like at the top, X cards of your library, where X is the number of artifacts you control. Put one of those in hand, put the rest on the bottom in a random order. This just feels pretty powerful, and like we were just looking at, some of the Asmo decks, and I don't know if like a 3-color build could afford to play a colorless land in its deck, but I definitely really like this for those Asmo decks that maybe go back to playing something like the Academy whatever, not Academy
Yeah,
Rector, Academy
yeah,
Manufacturer, and
something like that.
you're able to make like a ton of like artifacts, or like even playing something like Affinity, and you're able to kind of like find some of your like big spells, where you just get rid of a redundant land, get to dig like 8 cards deep for a card that you actually care for, like getting to
Hmm.
look at that many cards, even if it's like 5 or 6, I would say on the lower end, this seems like it can be a pretty powerful land.
Yeah, I could also see even scales picking this up. Just like late game when you're like, digging for something, just being able to like, you tap deck a land, and you're like, all right, cool, I'm gonna, pay 3 mana, look even like 2 or 3 deeper. That's 2 or 3, lands you're not drawing now in a row.
Oh yeah, getting
So I
to
could definitely go ahead.
get like an art in that deck in particular, like be able to dig for like Arcbound Ravager, or even go and get something like a an Inkmoth Nexus or an Ozlith or whatever, like just that last piece you're missing to just kind of
Hmm.
like, okay, I've assembled 30 damage in play, and I actually lied, it's 60 if I did it optimally,
Yeah,
because you need a PhD to like play that deck optimally.
yeah. I really like watching the deck get played by someone who has put in the time and effort to learn it. Because it's so fun to watch someone. Because I've watched it a couple different times where someone who knows how to play that deck is playing it, and I'm like, oh yeah, it looks like they can't win here. And there's like, well, actually, I tap this, sacrifice this, but in response, sacrifice this, and do you 30.
Mm.
You had 3 cards in play.
How did this
What
happen?
happened? But no, I do think this land will see play to some degree. I don't think it's going to be anything broken. I don't think it's going to be like, this isn't like, oh, this is going to get banned next time it comes out type deal. But it is interesting enough, and it is going to see play to some degree in some number of different modern decks. Maybe we'll see play in Pioneer. Probably not too much. There's not really like there's an artifact based deck, like with Is It in Soul, but like that deck's not trying to play any kind of long grindy game in any way, shape, or form. And like you're not keeping your artifacts on the field for that long. You're not making a bunch of game pieces essentially, like how Asmo Food can, or how Affinity or Scales can. Like you're trying to eat your artifacts as quickly as they come out in Pioneer.
I could even see some kind of like, artifact like control deck, something like a lantern control, even, just getting to ditch like random cards, where it could possibly get to the point where you can like activate this, dig 5, 6 cards deep, find another like Codex Shredder or something like that, or another Lantern of
Yeah,
Insight, something to that effect, and then actually play the card like on that
yeah.
turn. I mean,
Tier 3.5 to tier 3, baby.
hell, you know what? Hey, we'll take whatever we can get. I just think in a vacuum, this card is very powerful. When you can, look at, even 3 or 4 cards, like you exchange your 1 card for, you know, to look
The
at four or
possibility
five
of something
cards.
better. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's
No, I agree. I mean, like, so I think the most common thing with this thing is this land is that you're discarding a land and looking at the top 4 cards, and the worst case scenario is you're just going to find another land.
mhm.
So
the
worst case scenario, you look at the top 4 cards, realize they're all trash, and now we're not drawing these 4 cards the next 4 turns.
the only problem that I have with this card is that there's going to be times that if I do decide to play it, I'm going to have a great card in hand, exactly the one that I want, but I'm going to want to activate this. So
Don't
I
worry,
feel
I'll
like
I'll be there.
I'm
I
not,
will be there with the spray bottle.
I'm
That's
not,
how you know.
but I'm not going to get my value if I'm not activating it every turn. Then it's not worth it.
It's worth it. It's okay.
But yeah,
But
just some cards from that I thought were pretty cool, that actually I think had a chance to see some play in the Eternal formats and everything, potentially bolstering some other archetypes while maybe creating some of their own along the way. And I just think they do some inherently powerful things.
I agree. I think it will be interesting to see what happens. I'm kind of curious to see to have Thunder Junction come out. I think there's a lot of interesting cards we talked about that were not just like the obvious, broken cards. Like we talked about some of like the obvious broken cards that we think we'll see play and things like that. And then excuse me, some of the smaller cards too that aren't going to necessarily break the format or do anything. I don't think anything in the set's going to be like the next 3 mana Oko or Uro or anything like that where it's like, oh, that's gotta get banned. Like it's unreal. We shouldn't be doing this. But I do think it's going to add a lot to the format. I think it's going to hopefully turn up and make up some new decks. I would like to see some new life into Pioneer desperately.
Well, you're already tired of Vampire Phoenix, other vampire combo.
Yeah, yeah, I am.
A nice little bird sandwich in between our two vampire decks.
Yeah, like I said, I would have loved to see Amalia band, Soren band, and Treasure Cruise band give us back Expressive Iteration.
No, it
Yes.
has been decreed. It'll be a
Oh, I
no, and
know.
you'll like it.
Oh, I know. Wizards doesn't like to do things that I suggest.
They're no fun.
Reprint
Oh,
Shieldred like 4 times, please, and standard sets.
I heard you say secret layer drop.
Yeah.
And
How'd you know?
if you want a different Shieldred, you can go and play Fallout 76 and get the Shieldred skin before you end up putting a bunch of power armor on, and you'll never see it.
Jesus. All right.
Well,
I think that wraps it up for us, though.
yeah, a little bit of a short episode this week. Like we said, the Pioneer season is going to be starting soon, but it hasn't started yet. We're waiting for Outlaws to come out. Modern's not really. It's worth talking about, but also not if you are just trying to qualify for regional championships and things like that at this current moment in time.
Yeah, if
So
you're grinding right now, you don't care about modern. Modern's not a real format. It's the same way as how you treat standard now, that you've either qualified for the RC or didn't qualify for the RC. So standard doesn't matter until the RC comes around.
yeah. So until then, we're just gonna keep an eye out on things. Hopefully, I believe the set drops next week. Oh no, it's in like 2 weeks that Outlaws comes
Yeah,
out.
yeah, 2 weeks.
So we'll come back next week. We'll continue to monitor the modern Pioneer formats as they kind of come along. There is the first RCQ of the year happening at Apex Gaming next week, so we could probably even have like a little bit of a prediction show there. That'll be kind of
Yeah,
fun.
yeah. What we think is going to be there. But I'm interested to see what will happen there. Hopefully, I'll be getting qualified for the RCQ season here soon.
Oh yeah,
Not have to play more Pioneer than I want.
play it once and then forget about it.
Exactly. Thunder Junction is coming out April 19th.
All right, so it's like 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Two weeks from.
it's also the 100th Magic expansion set
Oh yeah.
for all
Well
you
then,
nerds out there.
honestly, that's kind of surprising that it's like that low. Like 130 years.
Well, yeah, but that's because we just now decided to make a set every 2 months.
All right, fine, fair enough. I was
Maybe in
like,
like 5 years, it'll be up to 500 sets.
like four sets a year. I don't know. I'm not willing to do the math on it. Works for
No.
me. But yeah, all right. That's gonna do it for this episode. Hope y'all enjoyed. If you did, of course, leave a like on the video. Comment down below any questions, comments, concerns, anything that you would like to express in the comments. As always, follow Randy's channel. Subscribe to him. The link will be down in the description below. Subscribe to my channel. You get all my content plus the show as well. And yeah, that's all I got. Well, do you have anything that you want to end with, Randy?
I don't think so. Follow us here. Follow me, please. I need to be able to feed myself.
Help me.
Help, help me to quit my job, please. No, that's not going to happen.
You never know. That's fun to
Very
dream.
true. It is.
Well, all right. Have a good night, everyone. We'll see you all next week. We'll do like a Pioneer preview show for the Apex event, and all that sort of stuff. And hopefully we'll see something cool. Maybe we can even review it. Problem, I don't know. We'll figure it out. Like that's gonna be a lot of fun being able to review some of these tournaments and stuff. So
Oh yeah,
definitely want to
looking
stay tuned
forward.
for that. But all right, have a good night, everyone, and hope to see you all in the next podcast, video, whatever. Go subscribe to the channels, all that fun stuff.